Bueno, y llegó el Chan Chan de Monterrey. Vaya, compa, y segundo.
Centro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarí. ¡Go!
El cariño que te tengo, yo no lo puedo negar. Se me sale la babita, yo no lo puedo evitar.
De Alto Centro voy para Marcané,
no puedo.
Llego a Puerto, voy para Mayarí. Centro voy para Marcané, llego a Puerto y voy.
The current administration, the Bush administration, as well as the Clinton administration and the other Bush administration.
You know that we have a different situation with the United States. We have been up and down many times, but right now we are not in very good situation at all. We had last year, for instance, the U.S. Food and Agribusiness Exhibition was very good for us. Even when we had to pay in cash, everything we bought was food. But anyway, we bought $253 million to the U.S. in terms of chicken, wheat, bottled milk. Imagine that we had to buy all this to other countries in Europe and South America. Even when we have the United States so close in here, we can have a trade with Florida, for instance. We have very harsh conditions to pay, but instead we have very good in terms of trade and all that. It will be great for us to have so near the products we need, because all the time they are mentioning that we don't have. I mean, the administration doesn't want us to have money from the United States because it will be money for Fidel Castro, but Fidel Castro doesn't live alone in Cuba.
Si el bloqueo se quita mañana,
question, if the blockade stops tomorrow,
le decía ahorita que va a ser muy bueno para el pueblo
it's
norteamericano
going to be very good for the American people
y para el pueblo cubano.
and for the Cuban people.
Se desarrollarán mucho las relaciones,
All the relations
habrá
will be
mucho intercambio
very
culturales,
developed, many cultural exchanges,
intercambios científicos,
many scientific exchanges,
intercambios económicos,
many economical
y
exchanges,
necesariamente tiene que mejorar la economía.
and it's normal economy it will improve.
Le voy a decir una cosa que no le dije ahorita.
And I'm going to tell you something I didn't tell you.
Cuando entramos en la crisis económica terrible de
When
los
we
años 90,
began in this terrible crisis in the 90s,
desapareció la Unión Soviética.
the Soviet Union disappeared.
Tuvimos que buscar nuevos mercados,
We had to look for new markets,
nuevos créditos.
new credits.
El gobierno norteamericano
The government of the United States
cooperó con esa crisis,
cooperate with this crisis,
aprobándose en el Congreso de los Estados Unidos
and then in the Congress of the United States they
una ley que se
passed
llama la Ley Torricelli.
law called Torricelli law.
Esa ley, entre sus cláusulas, tiene una
Between the things in this law is
que dice
said
que cualquier buque de cualquier bandera
if a ship of any flag
que toque un puerto cubano
comes to a Cuban harbor,
está sancionado durante 6 meses
the sanction is
a no
cannot
tocar puerto
go into
norteamericano.
the United States in 6 months.
Como ustedes se imaginarán,
As you can imagine,
ningún buque de país pobre
any ship of a poor country,
cuya economía depende del comercio norteamericano
and their economy is depending on the American economy,
venía a Cuba.
they cannot come to Cuba.
Y nosotros, por ejemplo, teniendo sosa cáustica comprada en México,
And then we had to buy chemicals in Mexico.
sosa cáustica,
Sosa cáustica
que es materia prima para hacer jabón.
Prime raw material to make soaps.
Bueno, pues no podíamos traerla
We could not
hasta que no pasara un
bring them
cubano.
here till a Cuban ship comes.
Y aquí no había jabón para bañarse.
And then we didn't have soaps to bath here.
Teniendo un buque de pollo comprado en Río de Janeiro,
And then we had a ship of chicken in Rio de Janeiro.
estaba allí, pero no podía venir a Cuba hasta que no pasara un buque cubano.
The ship was there, but the
all this could not come to Cuba since a Cuban ship goes there to take products.
Esta ley no nos detuvo.
But this law didn't stop us.
Y en el año 96 aprobaron otra ley en el Congreso norteamericano.
They passed a new law,
La ley Helms-Burton.
Helms-Burton law.
Esta ley sanciona a los
This
empresarios
law,
que tienen relaciones con Cuba.
Businessmen doing business with Cuba are sanctioned.
Por ejemplo, hay dos empresarios
There are two businessmen
que tienen relaciones en Cuba
having relations
que
with
no
Cuba.
pueden visitar los Estados
They
Unidos
cannot go to the United States
porque tienen relaciones con Cuba.
because they do business with Cuba.
No tenga ninguna duda de que si el bloqueo se acaba,
You can be sure if the blockade stops,
la economía cubana
the
subirá como la espuma.
economy is going to do like espuma.
The current administration, the Bush administration, as well as the Clinton administration and the other Bush administration and the Reagan administration, I go all the way back in history, have essentially decided that we're not going to have normal relations with Cuba, that we're going to continue an economic and diplomatic blockade, that Americans are going to be restricted in terms of their ability to travel to Cuba, which is somewhat ironic given the fact that we're a country that goes around bragging about freedom everywhere, but here we are denying our own citizens the freedom to travel to Cuba. But the administration is essentially on its own insisted that that policy remains unchanged. And of late, a number of members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, have been coming together saying, look, this policy is dumb. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. We should have normal relations with Cuba. We should have normal trade relations with Cuba. Citizens should be able to travel to Cuba. And so we have been trying to amend various bills to lift the restrictions, and we've been somewhat successful. We win our votes, but unfortunately, the Republican leadership in the House succeeds in eliminating what we've passed in conference committees, and the President of the United States always threatens to veto bills that include any provisions that relax our relations with Cuba. And so, that's kind of the dilemma we're in. I think Congress gets it, that we believe that our policy should change, that we should engage Cuba more than we have, and the administration is holding on to the old Cold War policy of basically we don't want to deal with Cuba, and using Cuba kind of as a vehicle just to kind of demagogue and to try to I think I don't want to sound too cynical, but to try to raise money for political campaigns in South Florida in particular.